Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone? So how many people in the room are managers or have managers that that under them? Just a show of hands. Pretty much everybody. Some people are future managers, correct? And they're wondering, where am I going in this career in Agile? Maybe some people like that, right? All right, so thanks for coming. I'm going to cut through the, who I am. You'll get the slides afterwards. We'll move on. And I'm going to start by talking about my first lesson in management. And my first lesson in management started when I was in CEGEP in college, a number of years ago, let's just say that, where I was working part-time while I was going to CEGEP, and I was full-time during the summer. And my job was working at a men's manufacturer. They were manufacturing suits. So in the summer, I was asked to be a supervisor of a section of the manufacturing line. And this section of the manufacturing line was in charge of making the front of the suit. So in essence, the front lapels and so on. And I was supposed to supervise the section of this team that did that. So this team was called the sewing and pressing team. And basically, they used to sew the front of the suit, and they used to press it to make sure that it looked nice before it was assembled at the end. And it's at this point in my career, very early, that I quickly learned that as a manager and as a supervisor, you can, organize, you can coordinate, you can manage people, but guess what? Nothing happens without your team. And at the end, as a manager, you're really nothing without your team. So that little nugget stuck with me since the beginning of my career, and as I went on to build teams in the future in my career, I always kept that little nugget in my mind. It taught me a very valuable lesson as a manager: never forget your team. And that's how you build teams that are happy and successful. So move the clock forward to 2004. At that point, I'm a manager in an organization, and we're starting our first Agile transformation. So very early in the Agile world, 2004 is three years into it. And so we're starting to put together teams, we're building teams. We're starting to take over the walls, we're putting stickers on the walls. People are thinking we're crazy, but it's 2004 and we're going Agile. So we spent 2 years putting together a number of teams. It's now 2006. I'm a QA director at that point. I have a team of 40 plus people, but they're all inside of the Scrum teams. And they're all being, self-sufficient, they're working, and they're making things happen. So as a manager, you start to ask yourself the question, well, what am I doing here? What is my role now that my team members are now being productive in their teams? And the same question is being asked still today in 2017. You can see in the LinkedIn forums, what do I do with my managers? Should I fire them all? Should I make them all Scrum Masters? There's a bunch of dialogue going on. So this is the goal of this presentation, is hopefully to provide you some insights on a number of ways this could go. So that if you're managers and you're wondering where you're going, or if you're a director and you have managers and you're wondering what to do with them, I'll provide you some of my experience that I've had over the years. So let's start this dialogue of what is the role of a manager in an Agile world by looking at two opposing views: the radical Agilist view and the scaled Agile view. So I know there's a number of definitions out there for the radical Agilist, but for today, this is my interpretation of the radical Agilist. So the radical Agilist will say Agile has to be pure. You cannot touch Agile, you've got to do it the way it was intended. The other thing that the radical Agilist will say, trust the self-organizing team. The team will make sure to deliver the right software. And of course, the radical Agilist will say, you don't need managers. That's the radical Agilist view. So that's one side. On the other side of that debate, Let's look at the scaled Agile view where they say, despite all the good stuff that the self-organizing teams are doing, you still need managers. And the managers can bring some value to the table. In the scaled Agile view, we'll say the managers can bring that technical or business knowledge that they have to the table. The manager can also help coach people on their teams. Even though they're in distributed teams, they still can help coach. The manager can also help in cases where someone ends up on the Scrum team, where things are just not working as well. They're saprados, and of course, they can worry about compensation and management, and they worry about budget. That's the role of a manager in an Agile world. And I'll show you one more view. Now, this view goes to another extreme, where it questions the whole need for a hierarchy in an organization. And so there's some companies out there that are now doing something called holacracy. And holacracy is a whole other way of thinking of things. Basically, there is no hierarchy. The hierarchy is dynamic and changes based on how the project is going. And the authority in a holacracy is actually at the team level and not coming from upper management and given whenever they feel like giving the authority. The other important thing in a holacracy is that the roles are defined around the work that has to be done and not around a person doing the job. So it's a very different way of thinking if you're going to do holacracy. So the whole point of showing you these three views is to tell you that things are changing. And so what role can you play as a manager as the world changes? So the first thing I like to tell managers that ask me this question is bring a new management style to the table. The days of a dictatorial manager telling you what to do, long gone. So that's just not going to work. So you got to come with a new management style to the table where you involve people in the team in the discussions and get them to help you make changes. So management style, the new one, that's the first thing. Secondly, as a manager, there is value you can bring to the table. Your technical knowledge, your business knowledge, that is very valuable to your organization. And so that's what you need to sort of keep in mind in this new Agile world. While your teams are being self-sufficient, there is still value in what you as a manager have. Now, as a manager, the other thing that's going to change is that the people on the teams are not just looking for a manager to manage them. That's the least thing that they want. They want a manager that's going to be more involved in what they're doing. They want a manager that's going to roll up their sleeves and say, how can I help you? So you can bring that value to the table as a manager, even if your team members are distributed into teams, they're still going to try to look at their manager as a coach. How can you help me? So that's a value that a manager can still bring to this Agile world. Now, to talk about the whole get rid of all the managers, this is a fellow consultant, Robert Gallen. He wrote a beautiful article, blog in 2014 about the whole topic. I encourage you to read it. And he really takes a pragmatic view on do you need managers in an Agile world. And his pragmatic view pretty much comes down to, as a pendulum swings, well, we have too many managers, we don't have enough managers. The pendulum eventually will come to lie in the middle. If you need the article, I'll give you the link afterwards. Right? So eventually the pendulum will lie in the middle, and it'll mean we'll have less managers than before, but we'll still have some managers. Right? That's really where we're probably going to end up. But at the end of this, regardless of how many managers, you shouldn't think I'm a manager, but everyone wants Agile leaders in an organization. So an organization that's going to try to invest in doing Agile is looking for people to lead the effort. And whether you're a manager or you're someone on the team or a Scrum Master or a coach, you need leaders to help Agile work. And especially in larger organizations, Agile transformations fail because there's not enough Agile leaders. So as managers, think of yourselves first as leaders rather than just as a manager, and help lead the effort to make Agile succeed in your organization. That's value that your organization is going to look for. Be that change agent that they're looking for, right? And so go in and say, how can I help? Roll up your sleeves and help make Agile succeed. We all know that the road to Agile is not easy. We know that, right? All right. So all of that to say, what has brought about all of this change, of course, is the self-organizing team. And really, the self-organizing team has brought about such a change that that's why the question of do I need managers has come about. So we're going to talk about a number of different self-organizing teams that I've seen over the last number of years. And these are pretty much the patterns of the teams that are out there. And you know, they change every day, but they pretty much stick around this. But before I get to some of those corporate self-organizing team, let's talk about a self-organizing team from the real world. Okay? This past spring, Montreal got hit with lots of flood, right? We had the worst flood in some areas in over 100 years, and some of those flood victims are still affected today. And when the flooding in Montreal started to happen, there was a bunch of people that had to get together and start building walls of sandbags to prevent their homes from being flooded. And I'm going to focus in one particular street out in the north end of Montreal in the Hanse-Cartierville. And on this particular street, when the water started to rise, it got to about 3 feet. The city came in and built a wall of sandbags. But the water kept rising as it was going and went over 3 feet. The city came back and built a 4-foot wall. But the waters kept rising. And at that point, the citizens of that street got together and said, we're going to build the wall. So they self-organized and they built this wall. Now that's an awesome wall. That's way beyond sandbags, right? And they built this as a self-organizing team. They had a very fixed vision and goal, which is prevent our houses from getting flooded. So the power of a self-organizing team is amazing when they have a clear goal and vision in mind. Now, these people were told by their insurance companies they saved $1 million in damages by building their own wall. It's pretty cool how much a self-organizing team can do. And this is why self-organizing teams in Agile have become so popular, because they can do a lot when they have a goal in mind. Let's move back to the world of Agile. And I'm going to show you 3 different organizations, red, yellow, and blue. So the red organization, and this was one of the organizations that I worked with over the years, they had teams with embedded skills. So they had developers, QA, everybody in the team, and the managers were on their side. And it pretty much looked like this. Your traditional matrix organization, if you wish, but the difference is in an Agile that you have your products and product owners at the top. So this is one general organization out there that happens today with self-organizing teams. The next organization yellow, we used a modified version of the Shopify model. And if you don't know what the Shopify model is, I'll answer questions afterwards, okay? So the teams had embedded skills again. Managers were on the side running what's called a guild in the Shopify model, but we had embedded leads. So the difference that we did was the leads inside of those guilds, going from left to right, they were actually part of the Scrum team. They were helping to deliver the sprints, but they also had some extra duties of coaching people in their discipline on best practices, on if they hit issues. They were actually there to answer the questions. So they had a bit more responsibility than just being a developer on the team or a tester on the team. So this was a model we used in one organization. In the last organization, Organization Blue, same idea. The key difference is the managers are playing a dual role. So the managers, aside from managing their discipline across the different products, they are also playing a Scrum Master role. So this is a pattern that has come out in the last couple of years where managers are wearing 2 hats. And a lot of organizations are starting to do this. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't work so well. You'll see why in a minute. The message to take out of this is that roles have changed. And so people's roles are no longer traditional. It's brought some confusion in the roles. The introduction of the new Agile roles. And so Erin B. Waltz has put up this nice diagram. She did this a number of years ago of the shift in responsibilities, right? The introduction of roles such as the product owner and the scrum master. And product managers have now moved some of their responsibilities over. Project managers moved over there. And the last project managers into scrum masters. This has brought about a whole debate whether you need project managers. And so this shift in responsibility and this introduction of these new roles has actually brought a lot of confusion into the marketplace. I was doing an assessment with a company in LA. I'm just finishing the assessment, and I interviewed over 50 people in that organization. And out of that organization's interview, I came up with this question. People were talking to me about product managers, project managers, program managers, product owners. Who's doing what? People in the teams are confused. Which roles are there? And then you add in, well, there's a scrum master, but there's a part-time scrum master. The manager is the scrum master. And then the manager's on the side saying, what am I doing? This is happening today. This is from a real company out in LA. So this confusion in roles is so visible that you just have to do a search on any job site and you can see the confusion. We're hiring a project manager, scrum master. We're hiring a scrum master, project manager. We're hiring an IT project manager, but you have to have a scrum master certification. So who's doing what? People are really confused. And so there is a difference between the job description and the role description. The traditional job description that we're used to is you do a job, you're hired for that job, and that's what you get hired for. Agile has brought in the idea of a role description. And the key difference is a role description can be done by whoever has the skills and can be done by multiple people depending on the project. That's a huge departure from the traditional job description. But what I tell organizations is you really need to decide which of the roles you're going to have. And a lot of organizations can't even make that decision. So the people in the teams are confused. Managers are confused. Which one can I do? So I always tell organizations, figure out which roles you're going to use and make them official. And say, these are the roles we're going to use in this organization. And the company in LA I'm working with, they still don't know, do we have scrum masters full-time or part-time? Are we using the role? Are we not? And again, these are real companies today that are grappling with it. How many in the audience have this kind of an issue? You don't know what roles are happening in your organization, right? So you know what I'm talking about, right? So once the organization makes it official, the next thing the organization needs to do is, guess what? Can we actually write some good job description and role descriptions? You'd be surprised how many organizations I go into, and the first thing I'll do is show me your job and role descriptions. And then you pull your hair out or you have her look. I have no idea what the role is doing. And so you say, well, you're talking about basics, but here's a job description from a real posting on the internet right now. This is for a technical program manager. So look at the title, Technical Program Manager. This program manager will be planning, project execution, will be doing development for the engineering team, right, driving it. In the next sentence, you're also a scrum master, right? They're telling you you're going to be wearing multiple hats, so they're making it clear. Further down, you're going to be a scrum master, an evangelist, a coach. Wow, you're doing it all. You're helping create the self-organized team. You're empowering them. You're driving continuous improvement. This is one hell of a role. You're wearing multiple hats and the willingness to go beyond your role. It's clear you don't know what your role is, but you're going to go beyond it, right? And at the bottom, you have experience with Agile software. What's Agile software? So people think, well, that's your task management. No, no. Further in the sentence, it says Jira. So somebody thinks there's something called Agile software, right? And at the bottom, you're managing multiple projects. So it seems like you're also the project manager. So clear job and role descriptions are essential. And unfortunately, there's too many examples out there like this. So if in your organization you're struggling to figure out what am I going to do with my managers, maybe take a step back and see how good your job descriptions and role descriptions are. So for me, it's essential that an organization starts with clarity in their job and role descriptions. That's an essential step for me. So as managers, what are your potential paths? Assuming that the organization figures all of that out for you, what are your potential paths in an Agile world? So these are the most common. And again, there's many paths for different organizations, but typically these are the paths that you see. Product managers and business analyst managers tend to go towards a product owner role, and the other three roles, project manager, development managers, QA managers, tend to go towards Scrum Master or Agile Coach. Those are the general patterns out there. The other pattern that I've seen, and you heard me mention already, is a manager is also doing a manager plus an Agile role, and wearing those two hats. That has become very commonplace in the marketplace today. If it hasn't happened in your organization yet, be ready for it because it's coming. So let's look at the three now key roles on the Agile side. We start looking at the product owner role. So if you're a product manager or a BA manager, you're thinking of, I'm going to become a product owner, or maybe you're already in the role and you're wondering what the difference is with what you used to do, this is the point that we're going to get here now. There's one key difference between the product manager and the product owner. The key difference is the product manager, in the traditional definition, is usually used to handling the business vision. Higher level vision stays closer to the customers. Whereas the product owner, if it's done well in an Agile team, is down with the team and is figuring out how to deliver the stuff with the team. So that's a key difference between these two roles. The other thing you'll see in larger organizations is you'll have a title such as Senior Product Manager or a VP of Product Management, and then they'll have a bunch of product owners working with the teams. Now the product owner role is such a senior role, such a key role, that one of the common complaints or common concerns is, well, there's either not enough product owners, or even if you have enough, they don't have enough time for the team. And we know that in Agile, product owner has to be there on a daily basis. So if you're thinking of this role, these are some of the challenges in this role as a product owner. Some of your responsibilities, you're focused on representing your client and users, and you want to bring that business values. And three of the key things you'll do as a product owner, working on the product vision, not the business vision that a product manager would do, and you're writing some of those user stories, as well, you're making decisions and you're prioritizing. So there's a lot of pressure on a product owner in an organization. The one thing I'll mention in product management is, unfortunately, I've seen too many organizations that don't have an Agile product management organization. So I've seen organizations that are still have a product management organization that's still trying to do the perfect PRD. And then it's going to hand that PRD to an Agile team. That process really brings friction. It just doesn't work. You're not going to get the full benefit of Agile if your product management organization is still trying to build the perfect PRD. It just doesn't work. So if you're going to go into this kind of a role, try to bring the product management organization to being Agile, which means doing just enough product definition. And doing just enough product definition means don't build the perfect PRD. Right? Next, let's move to the Scrum Master role. An interesting role that came out of Agile. And the Scrum Master role is really one where you're responsible for the process. And I know there's a number of Scrum Masters in the room, so you'll know what I'm talking about, right? You're not there to command, but to facilitate. And you're interacting with all of these people, right? The team, other groups, product owners, and senior management. So you're there to really keep the ball rolling. And you also, of course, clear the impediments, you support the PO in the backlog, you facilitate the Scrum rituals, etc., etc. So this is the definition of what a Scrum Master would do. In my experience, I have found that people coming from traditional development or software development roles like developers, QA, BA, do better in a Scrum Master role, or PMs that have come previously and done a BA, a QA, or a PM role. Traditionally, I've seen that more people are successful in this role if you come from that background. Doesn't mean you can't be successful, just my experience. Now, lately, this role has come under fire. How many people are questioning whether you need a Scrum Master? Nobody in this room? A couple? So, I was at Agile 2017 this past August. I was talking to Alistair Coburn, who's one of the original signees of the manifesto, and Israel Gatt, who's one of the gurus in the industry. We were just sitting there discussing, and Alistair said to me, he said, when we started the Agile Manifesto, it was all about just doing good software. We didn't talk about Scrum Masters and all of this. It was, we want to do good software, we're going to put together a team, we're going to do good software. But then as organizations got involved, you needed someone, to help make sure things are running. And the Scrum Master role was born, kind of thing. But many people these days are asking questions, is it really required, a Scrum Master role? It's a part-time role, right? It's not a full-time role. And anybody can do it. And then some people are saying, well, it's project management, or is it? So the Scrum Master role, again, continues to be questioned. Let me show you what two organizations have done. So in organization number one, they said, we have all of these managers. I understand we need Scrum Masters. I'm not going to hire Scrum Masters. I'm going to use my managers as Scrum Masters. So they took that path. In organization number two, they said, I'm going to certify all my managers as Scrum Masters. They're going to become full-time Scrum Masters. And a year into it, they said, I have all these managers, they're going to be part-time Scrum Masters. So in both cases, these organizations have sort of walked away from the full-time Scrum Master. Whether it's right or wrong, it's a pattern out there, right? But a Scrum Master role done well is a full-time job, but you got to do more than one team. Because the idea is as your team becomes self-sufficient and is delivering, you have less to do. So as a Scrum Master, you should take at least on 2 teams, maybe 3. And that makes it a full-time role. My one recommendation I have is if you're going to have a line manager play 2 roles, make sure they're a Scrum Master of a team where they don't have somebody that they have direct authority over. It's not going to go too well. Because the person on that team is saying, are you my manager or are you my Scrum Master, right? They're going to get caught in that. So what does a project manager do in these larger organizations? The common pattern out there that I've seen is that if you have both a Scrum Master and a project manager, the project manager will remain the business PM. They will stay at a higher level, they'll manage that communication, and they will manage tasks and risks not related to software delivery. So that's been a good delineation of responsibility in these larger organizations. Finally, the Agile coach. So let's talk about the Agile coach. So it's a role that's evolved over the last decade, let's say. And I'll show you what I did in 2014 with this organization that we had 15 plus teams. And at that point, I felt I needed a full-time Agile coach in this organization. So I created the role. I wrote a job description, a role description. I made sure it was approved by HR, right? So I'm trying to do what I preach, and we brought somebody into the role full-time. And I felt I needed it because this Agile coach is the one that was going to continue to practice and bring best practices to the teams. And the person that came into this role took this career path. He went from developer to manager, project manager, Scrum Master, and then a senior Agile coach. And I'll just show you an extract from the job description in 2014. So the Agile coach does coaching and mentoring, He coaches on key Agile principles, coaches the product owners on story elaboration and backlog refinement. He also shadows the Scrum team on their different roles, and he mentors individuals on a daily basis. This is from the actual role description we created in 2014. And one of the best descriptions of an Agile coach is from Lisa Atkinson and Michael Spade. They have the Agile Coaching Institute. So this is from their website. The one thing you need to take away from this is an Agile coach is a senior role. You're not going to put a junior person into this. There's a lot of dimensions as to what an Agile coach brings to this role. So if you're going to put someone in this Agile coach role, it has to be someone that's senior. Because the Agile coach, after all, is the one that's going to do coaching and best practices on Agile, will help coach the Scrum Masters, right? Because sometimes Scrum Masters are more junior, Agile coaches more senior, they're going to provide that coaching, and they're also going to do coaching on building in quality and testing in quality. The Agile coach is also the one that's going to put up that corporate definition of done, especially in large organizations. It's the Agile coach that will drive that. And then this corporate definition of done will get used at the team level. And I feel that in medium to large organizations, the Agile coach role is essential and mandatory. It's the only way you're going to build a sustainable Agile transformation. If you don't have a senior Agile coach in a large organization, it's not going to work, based on my experience. So my key takeaways for you today is be an Agile leader first. It doesn't matter what your role is. An organization is going to say, who's going to help me make sure my Agile transformation is going to work? Who are my leaders? And leaders don't have to just be directors and managers, right? Everybody can be a leader. So be an Agile leader first. And then embrace the principles of Agile. Become an Agile leader. Be ready to wear those multiple hats. So sometimes you might have to be a Scrum Master. Sometimes you might have to be a product owner if you're coming from the other field. But be ready to go around. If you're going to hold two roles, make sure you're not, again, have direct authority over anybody on that team. And your management style, right? It's a new world out there. The days of dictating stuff doesn't work. So bring that new management style, involve people in it. As you build your teams, you'll have happy and successful teams, and in the end, your organization will be successful.